Here is our first look at Microsoft Flight Simulator's preview of World Update 6. It includes a complete overhaul for Germany, Austria and Switzerland. It's brand new footage that comes from the World Update trailer that was shown during the Xbox presentation during Gamescom. Now, as we know from previous, this has been delayed slightly. It's going to be available on all platforms on the 7th of September, so that's both Xbox as well as PC. You can see a lot of new terrain here. This is Austria, some beautiful looking mountains there actually, and some wonderful looking areas in Switzerland. Look at that mountain there. So one thing that's often been a problem is the rounded mountains. Hopefully that's going to be addressed specifically in Switzerland and those other areas, because I know a lot of people would love to see that. The update will also include around 100 new points of interest, some bush trips, a new landing challenge, and a new tour in the form of a discovery flight. So, do any of those points of interest or any features there in that trailer stand out for you? For me, it was the mountains in Switzerland and Austria. I'd love to hear from you in the comment section below which points you'd like to see. Now, it doesn't end there. There's a bunch of other content coming to Microsoft Flight Simulator as well. We know that the Maverick, the Top Gun update, is coming in November. However, before that, there's a new expansion set to arrive in autumn. This, Microsoft say, is going to be the largest expansion they've ever released for Flight Simulator, and it will feature racing. This is full-on multiplayer competitive racing. For this expansion, Microsoft have partnered with the Reno Air Racing Association, bringing their National Air Racing Championship into the sim. These then are the fastest motorsports on the planet, and it should be a good fit for Microsoft Flight Simulator. I'm actually quite interested to see how that's all going to work out. In fact, Microsoft were quite keen to point out that the races would allow players to fly at over 500 miles per hour at 250 foot above the ground. So yeah, pretty interesting races. Moving back to World Update 6 for just a moment, a new plane will be available around about this time called Germany's Junkers U. Now this is a pretty old plane. In fact, none of them actually fly anymore, yet it has been recreated in the sim. It seems very likely, speculating here, but it seems very likely that this plane will be a paid add-on, much like Asobo's other planes. That said, this is also the largest plane that Asobo ever released outside of the ones available directly in the game. On another note here, Microsoft also pointed out that they have been working with a bunch of museums around the world. I do believe they mentioned 40 museums. And the idea here is to preserve planes that are no longer functional or no longer in flight. In short, Microsoft send in their teams to the museums, scan and rebuild the planes' digital versions, and then share those planes back to the museum so the museums can do whatever they want with them. And then Microsoft and Asobo bring these planes directly into the game, so I'm assuming we can expect to see a lot more of these in the future. Sticking with the subject of aircraft for the moment, there's something very unusual here, the Volocopter. Now, some people may have heard of this. It was a new one for me, so I guess there's a bunch of others out there that haven't heard about it either. These are very unusual craft. They're going to be used eventually for air taxis, intra-city air taxis in fact, so basically you're about to hop on board one of these and it will take you from one part of New York City to the other, or indeed whichever other city these are going to be operating in. Of course, that is still a while off yet. But meanwhile, Microsoft are going to be bringing the Volocopter directly into Microsoft Flight Simulator. That means you'll be able to fly it all over the world. So yeah, I do think this is a very interesting, if somewhat unusual addition. So there we have it, a load of new announcements for Microsoft Flight Simulator directly out of Gamescom. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Orbex today released their new mesh for Alaska. You may remember at the end of last week I took a look at this particular mesh and made a comparison between Orbex's high detailed mesh and the default version already in the sim. There wasn't too much in the way of difference, so I did reach out to Orbex asking for comment on this, and they did get back to me. Here's what they had to say. The main feature of the mesh is the reduction of how the terrain morphs and changes as you pass over it. The way our mesh has been compiled is that all the visible LODs are loaded in as opposed to being progressively loaded as the user gets closer. Our mesh products focus on terrain accuracy. The DEM data itself may be of similar resolution, so it would appear to be similar in some areas. So that explains that then, and this is something I actually did notice and something we can check out again in the future. So I'll be looking at that in a future video. But basically, yes, the terrain in Alaska with the Orbex Alaska mesh is far more stable than it is with the default mesh. There's less morphing and less popping of the terrain. So that brings us to the end of this video. As always, thanks for watching, and and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.